Good day, everyone. Welcome back to episode 13. We're all the way now to 13. And I'm Stephanie Ledger with First Rate Hospitality and my co host, Michèle Kline. Welcome back.
Hello, everyone. Chapter 13 of this amazing journey. And we're excited today. I'm particularly excited today because I have someone who came to visit us who I have had the pleasure of working with in the past. And it was a very memorable experience. So without further ado, we have Carlo Sidestam from Hilton Grand Vacation on the Boulevard in Las Vegas. Thank you so much, Carlo, for being here. Carlo, tell us a little bit about you, your title, your role within the organization. And then Stephanie, we'll go back to you so that you can introduce the topic of the day.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Carlo.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carlo Sidestam, or Carlo Sidestam, is my pronunciation of it. So work with Hilton Grand Vacations about 3 years. I 25 plus veteran within hospitality, started quite young, straight out of high school, and built my way through operations, whether that's food and beverage or rooms departments, up to where I'm right now, the general manager of Hilton Grand Vacations on the Boulevard. Gorgeous resort, 12 and 28 rooms, right on the strip. So very excited to be here, part of it. I've had very fond memories of Michèle, working with her, great partner, and the least I could do is join her in this adventure. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. So today we're going to be talking about mental health. You know, it is National Self-Care Month, and so we want to be able to making sure that we are talking about this issue, because especially with COVID and the different variants that are going on and employees off and on. So, you know, making sure that we're able to discuss with the mental health and self-care.
That's fantastic. So because we are WTF Walk the Floors, we want to make sure that we tie it all in together. And even though self-care may not be a super funny subject or topic, we still have some funny stories to share with you when it comes to mental health. And we thought there are lots of stories that we all carry from our days in the industry where we have gained awareness that when a higher up at the hotel, whether it is a vice president or it is someone from corporate office or it is the general manager, walks the floors, which is what we encourage everyone to do, we realize that when this doesn't happen often, the level of stress on a line level employee is really high. So, Carlo, why don't you tell us, you were sharing with us a little bit earlier, a very funny story about your venture at one of the massive Las Vegas properties that you were in charge in, where when you walked the floors, people at the very beginning when you first got to the property were very intimidated until you were able to break that ice. And then obviously you can share some of those pointers and tips on how to do that. But walk us through that journey, if you will.
So yes, the resort was a gorgeous resort, and I came from not from within Vegas. So I came from a different state, moved in. So I was a brand new leader. People really didn't know me and my style and approach. Having spent a lot of time in housekeeping as an executive and a director, obviously I knew what that entailed, and to me it was a no-brainer that I always walk the floors and make sure that my product and presentation is there, because I take great pride in any resource that I do, and I want to be the best of the best. So through that, as a leader, my thought process is we lead by example. And if I will not ask anybody else to do something that I wouldn't do. And part of that is walking the floor. So if I want my floor managers or section leaders or department heads to walk the floor, then I need to be the guide and leader and show them how I would do it in my expectations, so the expectations are clear. So the interaction with them and having the kind of being their coach of, here's some of the things that you can look at when you look at the room. Take it from this perspective, that perspective. What I didn't know at the time, but a little later came to find out that whenever I was on the floor, there was a nickname that the team would share, whether that's on radio, whether that's through phone, smoke signals, whatever it was, that everybody knew that I was walking the floor. It was funny because I would find the hallways a lot of times empty. And I was like, where are the people? Where are the room attendants? Where are the house persons? So I would want to search. So that's, a fun way to make me think a little bit of why is it that people are not willing to show their care for the product, because we're very proud of the product, but they were not comfortable enough to be present when we walked. Another resort that I did know the nickname. They called me the ninja because they never knew when I came. They never know where I disappeared to. And they never knew when I showed up. And they said, you are like a ninja. You're always here all the times of the hours, morning shift, evening shift, even overnight. It happened to be that at that resort, I lived in the resort for about 6 months. So I had a very close connection. I would show up on the public area. For me, it was more understanding my business and understanding what I'm working with, so I could give clear expectations and guidance. It wasn't to put anybody on the spot. It wasn't to check in on somebody. It's just, what does the guest feel? What do they see? How is the interaction? Because I'm a social person where I thrive on social interactions with my team and with guests. So I'm very easy that way. But I'm also very down to earth. I don't take the title. My ego is not that big. And that's what I tell them, because they would see me in their lunchroom. They would see me in their offices just chatting away about family or whatever. But that point of now on the floor, basically on their turf, got them so perturbed that I needed to find a way of how do we make this more fun.
So before you give away the tips on how to, is it safe to assume that they were so stressed out because they were not used to seeing perhaps leadership of that title in their areas, as opposed to perhaps the fact that they weren't proud of their product? Because I'm sure they were proud of the product as you went in and started walking with them or getting to know them better. But the fact that the new guy is always out there and you were there for 6 months living on property, then would you say it had to do with the fact that there was no continuity on this and there was no habit of seeing leadership on the floor, perhaps?
Absolutely. And it's very true to that point that previous to my arrival, they would have the leadership walks, but it was once a month and very inconsistent. And at some point, the feedback was it seemed to be very targeted in certain areas. It wasn't throughout the complex. One of the complexes I had 5 different towers. So it very, very different. You went from one style of room to luxurious suites to lofts. I mean, you had everything in between. But that it's very right that they were not used to seeing the senior leader being on the floor consistently, almost every day, every shift, at least touching base, whether that's, and a lot of time it wasn't just to check on something, it was just to say hello, just to shake hands, just to, bring a candy or something, just breaking down those barriers of, no, I'm not a somebody that is unapproachable or high up on a pedestal. No, I'm just a guy. I'm my father, I'm a brother, I'm a human being, and I'm here as a human being talking to you as a human being. That was something completely new to them that they didn't grasp in the beginning until they got comfortable. But just breaking that ice, and initially that fear of, oh my goodness, this leader is in my area and he's coming towards my card or my room or whatever that was, just, like you said, it probably terrified them. I didn't think of it that way. So
I'm sure
And
also too, when you're taking care of your employees, giving them a candy or a drink while you're up there walking or even around in different departments of just saying hello. A lot of times, some of the departments, they have to work independent just because that's what their position is. And then they actually get to see someone, in the executive level coming over and just saying a simple hello, and then that translates over to the guests, because if the employees are being taken care of, then they're more likely to take care of the guest.
Of course, yeah, the service profit chain, it's just what it is. The circle of service, take care of your team members and they will take care of the guests.
Yes.
But take care of them the right way. Don't try and be fake about it.
Oh yeah.
Be genuine when you have those interactions. And I think that makes a big difference because our team members are very smart. They're very, very smart. They know when you're faking it, and then they know when you're truly out there to spend time with them. And I think that's what they felt, that the resorts that I've been at is, the legacy that I left in every single resort that I worked at is they know that I was a fun guy. I was firm but fun, but I was consistent, and it was equal to everybody. There was nobody who got more than anybody else. And that's the legacy. And even now, I connect with team members that I have 20 years ago, and leaders or supervisors that were supervisors or hired in as supervisors. I've been able to guide them later on of, hey, they will call me and ask questions of, remember this, how did you work through that? And now I become their mentor versus their supervisor, because we built that relation over time. And I think as a leader, that's very important. Don't take your role too serious, I would say. Yes, you have it, great, but don't take it too serious to not encapsulate that human part of it.
and I also think that when team members work in a more relaxed environment, knowing that they have that direct line of communication with their leadership, and they are able to get past the title and see people as people, human for human, that their level of productivity increases. Because when you're stressed out, you do not perform at the same level. So I think it's very gracious when we have leadership that are that way. I remember early on in my career at a property in Tahoe, we used to have a GM that we went from a very corporate driven numbers person to a very fun, outgoing, in your face type of GM who knew everybody's name, who you would run into on a Saturday night. This was a gaming property. So on a Saturday night when the casino floor was exploding with guests, this person would be there and saying hello to all team members and everybody. So you go from none of that to all of that,
Yep.
right? So it takes a little while for everyone to like decompress and relax and realize that this is okay, and this is a new culture, and this is a new environment. And one of the things that he brought to the leadership team was he was very adamant about having his team of leaders exercise. So what he did is he rolled out a program where there was a ridiculous discount for team members to use the property gym. He realized there was an opportunity and not a lot, it was not going to interrupt with the guest experience at all. So he gave everyone, it was something ridiculous where it was a no-brainer that you would go to the gym, right? And then that was so successful for the leadership team that then he rolled that over to the entire property. Wow. So I think there's something very important to be said about leaders who genuinely care about the well-being of their team members.
Absolutely.
Yeah, having that work-life balance is important. We all speak about we are the extended family because many of us spend more time at work than at home. And our personal life may be broken. So this may be the only getaway from that. And if we're able to create that connection and comfort and trust with the team members, the feeling that this is my getaway from my everyday chaos that I may have outside. I've had many a time team members come into the office and just completely break down because they just at that point that they can't take it anymore, and initially think it's something about work, but it isn't. But because we created that level of trust, they're able to release that pressure and just have 5 minutes to vent and then walk away a lot better. So those kind of interaction, I mean, it to me means so much, and it makes my point of view of what I do so much more meaningful because there's a reason why I'm doing what I do. There's a reason why I have a passion for service, but the passion is for the team more than the guests in this aspect because they are my internal guests and they are as important as my external guests.
Yeah, and it's all about creating that safe environment too for your employees, because you never know what they may be having to deal with outside of work. And a lot of hotels have a lot of variety of resources too, of hotlines and counselors, to be able, wherever they may be going through outside of work, that may even be affecting them at work, but they just don't know how to get to the resources or outlets to be able to improve on their mental health and self-care. But when you're, up on the floors and having those casual conversations, then they start feeling that comfort to then being able to, share with things that they may not have been feeling safe to share with.
Absolutely, yes. And that comes even more important when tragic things happen in the city or at a resort. And we all know Vegas has gone through tragic back a couple of years ago with 10-1. And then various resort being mega resorts that we are, there's so many things that go on. And team members are actively and directly impacted by that. And how do you manage through that and how do you work through that? And don't forget that part that though we try to protect them from a lot of it, they're still exposed to a certain level. They may not have all the information, and because of that, they have even more questions, even more worries of what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to my job duties, or what's going to happen to my room that was affected. What do I do? How do I go through that? Whether that's a death in a room, or whether that's a fire in a room, or more severe shooting in a room. How do you work through that with a team and make sure that they're okay? Because at the end of the day, if they're not okay, they're not going to be able to produce to the level that you want them to do. They won't be able to.
Especially the long-term repercussions, right? I remember when 10-1 happened, which was, for anyone who's not familiar with this, it was the largest massive shooting in the history of the United States, where some crazy person decides to start shooting off of the 60-something floor of a resort into a concert venue. And a lot of people were killed and a lot of people were injured. And how the long-term repercussions of a situation like this one, where, first we were facing, how do we deal with this? What's going on? How do we troubleshoot on this? No one is ever prepared for anything like it, regardless of the type of training that you may have. But also, I remember years later, the date was coming up, and I was working on an HR role in a property that happens to be the first property right after the concert venue area. And I had no idea how this date coming up and how we had to memorialize what had happened in the most effective way, right? But how many of these team members who happened to be on duty that particular night had been impacted long term. And I would find them in my office crying, telling me how they felt and how they remembered things vividly.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting to think about that and how we have to be very cautious of specifically dates that are like that. When we try to memorialize them, then what is the repercussion behind that too?
Yeah. And even if it, that happened in Las Vegas, but it still impacted the hotels across the country, because you never know when something could happen that's similar or even different that, creating not safe environment, but still being able to acknowledge that and discussing it, that okay, these are our steps if if it was to happen to here, or what, this is what we're hearing from our colleagues, what they're doing and discussing with their hotels that are directly impacted, but still being able to discuss it and acknowledge it, and not just sweeping in and being like, okay, we're still performing our duties, but it's all about talking about it. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Carlo, for joining us on WTF and walking the floors with you and your team. And where could people that want to connect with you, where can they be able to reach out?
So I am on LinkedIn, so you can always search me on LinkedIn if you want. And I'm on it every day, and I mean, it's a great platform for professional connections. So if you have questions, you can always, as we said, DM me or there, and I'll be able to connect with you and answer questions or guidance. Very active in that, and I'm also obviously in the city very active on other items. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, and everyone enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Anything
Thanks,
else?
Carlo, for being here. Great mentor. Anyone who's out there who wants to reach out to Carlo via LinkedIn, he is a total trooper in the industry. Incredible credentials. Thanks for enlightening us with your walking of the floors. And we will see you on the next episode.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Have a great one. Take care.